Welcome to Star Citizen and the PvE Space Combat Guide. In this modular guide, which is intended for beginners as well as advanced Star Citizens, we give you simple but very effective tips for space combat against the AI opponents on the way, so you can have an easy game in the bounty hunt or in space missions. Thus, previously thought opponents will quickly become worthwhile bounty targets, and our success rate in space combat will increase significantly. For this purpose, we will go into the various possibilities in several steps, whereby you can of course incorporate your personal style and skills at any time to be even more successful in defying the PvE threats in the verse. Like all guides, this one is modular and you can use the timestamps to jump to your desired areas at any time, so that you can access interesting sections without waiting. The goal of this guide is to help you gain confidence in space combat and have more fun with Star Citizen. In the first part, we will cover the basic options which are especially relevant for beginners. However, all parts build on each other and differ in the necessary flight maneuvers and the flight modes. We start in coupled mode, which is activated by default. Here you get a flight assistant that controls your thrusters and flight movements to enable a safe and stable flight. You can recognize this activated coupled mode in your head-up display by the dot at the designation CPLD for coupled. To move in space, in this mode you have to give constant thrust in any direction, otherwise the flight assistant will bring you to a standstill, which means a stationary position. In space combat, the most basic rule is simple: keep moving and dodge enemy fire. But since this sounds easier than it is, a simple tip: stay permanently in a sideways movement. To do this, you can use the A or D key with the keyboard or use other input devices accordingly to trigger a permanent sideways thrust. With the nose of your ship, with the crosshair in the center, we always try to stay on target. So all of our movement initially consists of giving lateral thrust and staying on target with the nose. With this basic control method, we already have a very simple and effective movement model, which has clear strengths in the PvE area. And of course, alternative and more versatile movement sequences are absolutely adequate for more experienced pilots, as long as they grant you a safe flight feeling and a predictable ship control. For a successful space combat, we now only have to fire our weapons, whereby there is no technical difference between a fixed loadout like here or a target assistant variant. For beginners, however, a gimbal loadout is recommended. Details about this can be found in the beginner guide of the channel. But since it is rather easy as an experienced PvE pilot to fight against PvE targets and above all to cut a video together suitably, here a complete space fight against several targets, whereby we deactivate the shields of our Aurora MR in order to demonstrate the just presented simple control possibility. However, we're flying in decoupled mode here, which we'll introduce in detail in the next part of the guide. And since the fight lasts several minutes, we will increase the speed accordingly in this guide, in order not to steal your precious time, but to present the process in a comprehensible and resilient way. The targets to be found are a Vanguard Warden, a Gladius as well as a Saber, so from a light to a medium to a heavy fighter, a normal high-risk target mission. Here we simply apply the simplified control methodology mentioned by executing a lateral thrust movement and keeping the nose on the respective target. As an extension, which is also included in the third part of the guide, we partially use a rolling motion to make our trajectory look chaotic, and this poses seemingly unsolvable problems, especially for their AI. But we take it slowly and above all, vividly. You can learn and internalize this control method within a few minutes, whereby the free flight or like here a lonely asteroid is suitable. Here we go into a lateral thrust movement, whereby we fly first in the coupled mode, thus the assistant-supported flight mode. An important point, which is generally valid for space combat, is the limitation of the ship to the SCM speed, the recommended speed for the respective ship, at which our systems work optimally, do not directly overheat and fail, and above all, we hit where we shoot. Here we already achieve a significantly higher survival ability in a fight, since many hits of the AI opponents are already pass us by. So we have completed the first part of the guide, the basic control method for PvE space combat in coupled mode. However, we still have other possibilities which can only be realized through small expansions and which promise an exponential increase. The second part of the guide only involves pressing a single key, the V key by default. With this we switch off the flight assistant and enter the decoupled mode, which we can check by extinguishing the display under CPLD as confirmation. The control method remains the same, however, we will be much faster and depending on the target, we can always briefly suspend the thrust because we fly in decoupled mode as long as in a thrust direction until we give a corresponding counter thrust. In short, we fly purely thrust controlled, whereby an automatic braking or correction is omitted. We also have to keep an eye on the distance to our target because we can cover distances faster due to the high speed and the not automatically stabilized flight path. However, I can only recommend that you try out this flight mode for yourself, as it won't present you with any major problems, especially in space combat. And if you want to go one step further, we come to part 3, where we add another key to our control method, the roll with the standard key Q or E. Here we decide for a roll movement, which we use especially with a very fast sideways movement in order to slow down a bit and generate more control on the one hand, and on the other hand to achieve an even more chaotic and unpredictable trajectory. Here, especially AI opponents are no longer able to hit us, whereby here the proximity to the target or the used armament of the enemy does not play a role. Only missiles and torpedo hits can be really dangerous. Experienced pilots or veterans in the cockpit of course have much more advanced skills and flight maneuvers, which can be much more effective, but this method is already sufficient to easily survive in combat against our AI opponents. Therefore, let's take a look at what is possible with it, how this type of space combat looks like and where the limits may lie. We switch to decoupled mode, go into SCM speed in direct combat, which shows up as a white line on the speed display, and approach our targets. And before we press the fire button ourselves, we simply apply our control method by thrusting sideways, keeping our target in front of us and performing an irregular rolling motion. After gaining some confidence, we then take aim at the enemies and take them out, one by one. I'll leave you alone for the remaining 30 seconds of this rather unspectacular fight and see you at the next timestamp, where we come to the limit of what is feasible as a solo pilot. We deactivate the shields of our Aurora MR again and use all techniques of the 3 parts. Without shields, any more direct hit is clearly visible and would end the fight quickly, and I strongly recommend you keep your shields activated. This is a demonstration of what is possible by combining the control options in decoupled mode, in the medium term in Star Citizen quite real. Therefore, we speed up the fight again to avoid having to make cuts. Our 3 opponents in this very high-risk target mission are 2 Vanguard Warden as well as Valkyrie. Here it is also crucial to stay in the direct vicinity of the enemies, otherwise we have to expect an increased amount of missiles. And with the combination of our control techniques, we didn't take any damage here either, and are richer by several bounties. And by using more powerful ships, we again significantly reduce the time needed for bounty missions. Thus, there are no more opponents in this area that could be described as hard. Only in the area of the elite risk target missions, we as solo pilots are still confronted with challenges, because we are confronted with several fully manned hammerheads, which also have considerable problems to hit us, but mostly the firepower of our ship is a limit. Because if we are on the move with a larger ship, the category of a Constellation or Prowler, we will be hit more often due to the lack of speed and the more expensive size. As As a golden mean for the bounty hunter missions, I would therefore advise medium fighters, because they usually have very good firepower, but still fast enough and especially not too big. Here we have then an effective and fast variant in the baggage. But how elite risk target missions can look like solo using the techniques of this guide we see here. The 3 hammerheads are very strongly equipped and have strong shields and an enormous firepower. However, this firepower does not reach us, whereas we need all the longer to cause damage because focusing on one of the shields, which would mean a change of our flight system, ends here very quickly in some hits, which would then abruptly end the fight. So I don't really recommend elite risk target missions as a solo pilot and a conventional fighter, because the time needed is not in relation to the yield. I hope you liked the video and leave me a like and a subscribe here. This guide is for beginners and advanced pilots or anyone who is looking for a change in space combat. Dedicated PvP pilots will probably just smile tiredly here, but I would also be very interested in your opinions and tips on this topic. Is the flight system in Star Citizen too easy? Does the AI lag punch? Are there alternative games that are more challenging? I'm looking forward to your comments and opinions, either directly on the video or in the Discord. But the important thing at the end, a big thank you to all Patreons, channel members and Twitch subscribers. You are a huge motivation, and without you the whole thing would not be possible in this form. Thank you guys, you definitely rock! And of course there will be various giveaways again, an Origin 100i, a 300i and various other subscriber flares here on YouTube, in the Twitch streams or even in Discord. Just check it out. And are you looking for like-minded people? The Royal Retirement Lounge, truly gentlemen, are still looking for new members. I say goodbye, until next time, and as always, see you in the verse.